Nice, thanks, guys. No, it's really, really lovely to see some visitors here, some faces, some people who have joined in with us. So a big welcome to those of you who have joined in with us for tonight. Really nice to have you here. And some people from last year's Link crew as well. Lovely to have you here as well. One of the things that I think is a really good thing that's come out of the earthquakes for us here in Canterbury is that we actually talk about wellbeing now. Which we didn't really talk about that much before, but it's kind of talked about now. We think about it and we talk about it, and we're encouraged to think about it and talk about it. And I think that is a really positive outcome, a really healthy thing, and it's probably something that should have been happening all the time. But we are much more proactive now in thinking about what helps us be okay. What keeps us in a good space, what keeps us in a good state. And it turns out that there's lots of good science behind that. It's quite new science, but it's a vastly, very, very rapidly growing area of knowledge. And it's really, really worth knowing some of the stuff, some of the science, if you like. It's actually hard science behind well-being. Now you might be thinking, what do we mean by well-being? We'll come back to that in a moment. But just about how the next 80 minutes, 90 minutes or so is going to be for those of you who have not necessarily been part of the Link project before. We're going to invite you to we'll talk to you a little bit from the front, but not much, and we'll invite you to have lots of conversations, which are short, sort of fairly focused conversations around your table and in your groups, your community groups, and we'll share some of that around the room as well. So we'll try and keep it moving fairly quickly. So there's going to be loads of noise for a few minutes, and then we're going to try and get you to all be quiet again, which is the hard bit really, because big conversations get going and then we try and keep it moving on to the next thing. But we'll try and make that work smoothly. If you're here and you're the only person here from your community, feel free to club together with 2 or 3 others who are the only people here from their community, so that you can talk, you can share your thoughts with others in a way that's relevant for you. That's good. So I said, what do we mean by wellbeing? Because it is one of those terms that gets used in all kinds of weird ways. For example, I was in Rickenham Mall the other day and I saw this sign that said, discover your sense of well-being. And it's one of those Chinese massage things. We're not talking about that. It's not what we mean by well-being. But Andy is going to explore that a little bit with us. What do we mean by well-being?
Okay, so I'm Andy. I was in the Link group last year, so in the first intake. So it's great to come along and see a few of the first Link group here, and nice to be invited along to have a chat. My role at the CDHB is Staff Wellbeing Coordinator, so I've been been set up a staff wellbeing program over the last few years, and during that time done a lot of reading about wellbeing and been quite immersed in what's going on across Christchurch in terms of wellbeing. But first of all, as Anna said, it's interesting to have a ponder about what wellbeing means. So the first thing I'm going to throw out to you guys is just have a quick chat around your tables and have a think about, I guess, defining wellbeing. What does wellbeing mean to you? So maybe just a minute or two to have a think about that. Okay, so lots of good sort of key words, because I think we sort of inherently know when we're well, and we sort of inherently know when we might be struggling a bit, but in terms of actually defining it, it can be quite difficult. And but certainly what it is it's more than just being physically active and eating well. And in the sort of game I'm in, that's usually referred to as wellness. But well-being is a much broader, sort of much more holistic construct than that. So here's sorry, I'm not used to using this Mac device. So here's a definition from the World Happiness Report, which, to be honest, sounds like the sort of report you want to get up and read in the morning and sort of charge off and have a happy day, doesn't it? But so it says well-being is about having meaning in life, fulfilling our potential, experiencing enjoyment, and feeling that our lives are worthwhile. So that sort of encompasses a number of the words that were coming out before. But that's almost, to me, it's almost a state of being or an outcome. And I like to burrow down a little bit more and think, well, okay, fair enough, but what underpins that? And so here's some some of the things that, depending on how you look at it, some of the things that influence well-being and might get you to that point. So mental or emotional health, for example, physical health, quality relationships, financial health and spiritual health. And at the bottom there, I've tagged a bit more on about spiritual health, because it certainly doesn't have to have a religious connotation. It may for you, and that's fine, but for other people it doesn't have to. So those are some of the components that together might feed into giving you your well-being, if you like, or making you feel well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It doesn't mention at all, maybe that, or some people, connections with my culture and environment would be equally contributing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so that's just a bunch of things that I've put up here. So as we'll, sort of where we're going with this in a way, is that defining well-being is very difficult, and I've actually got a paper here from the International Journal of Wellbeing which is titled "The Challenge of Defining Wellbeing," so which I'm happy to send to anyone who wants. It's quite an interesting read, and someone mentioned balance before. Comes up with a theory related to balance. So yeah, there's certainly, for different people, there'll be all sorts of different things which feed into their well-being, certainly. So this example here basically is defining well-being in terms of different types of health, if you like. And then if we have a look at the World Health Organization definition of health, it actually defines health in terms of well-being. So it flips it around the other way. Okay, so hence me bringing that paper along, that there's no crystal clear answer to this, and there'll be different meaning coming out of this for different people. But what it does say here is health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And I think that's a really important point, whether we want to label it health or well-being, okay, that it's not just about the absence of disease or infirmity. There's a whole spectrum of things with disease and infirmity at one end, but there's a whole sort of spectrum out the other end in terms of positive health and well-being.
What does infirmity mean?
Being unwell, I guess. Yeah. Has anyone got a better definition than that? Yeah. So having.
I have to come in here and say, as someone who's probably infirm, it's a fairly a loaded comment that you can be diseased or infirm and yet still have well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And there are several models which actually spell that out. Yep.
The absence of pain is probably something I would put ahead of the absence of disease or infirmity, because pain is probably the one thing that will always affect uncontrolled pain.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, a very good point, and it just shows you that this is the World Health Organization coming up with this, and already we're picking holes in it, which is great. Yeah.
Where I come from, disease can be an release of mind.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a medical terminology.
Yep, absolutely. And we've tended to sort of medicalise a lot of this stuff, and there's a real shift away from that at the moment, which is good news. It's great, yeah. Okay. So the key point there really was that there's this whole kind of positive part to health, not just the negative aspect. So I'm going to hand over to Anna now, who's going to follow on from that.
Thanks. So those people who have been part of the LINK project will have done this before, and I'm going to ask you to do it again with no apology at all. So grab a piece of A4 paper. You've got some blank A4 on your table there. And can I remind you of this? This is a very, very, very technical thing for those of you who are not familiar. This is a stoichiometer. And it's a little chart on which you get to measure how kind of stoked you are feeling, or unstoked. And I'm going to ask you to just take 3 or 4 minutes to draw your stoichiometer, and it's really just a line that does this, or whatever, you know. And we're just going to do it from this year so far. So from the beginning of this year, how stoked or unstoked were you, and what were the kind of key things that made that line go up or down? So just you can just draw your own little stoichiometer. 3 or 4 minutes. Have a little think. Can I I just ask you a question? And I've done this before with those of you that were here at 4 and 1. When we do this, I'm going to say 2 words. It's a word association game. I want you to just yell out the first word that comes into your head when I say these 2 words. You ready? Ready? Mental health. What did you say? Hey?
With an ED on the...
Nice. Go on, and more, go on. Mental health. Oh, I can't repeat it. It began with F. Yeah.
Isolation.
Isolation. Go on, keep going. Word association, mental health. Lonely, sorry? Really important. Connections. Happiness. Funding. Prescribed. Medical model. All right. Cool. Good range actually in this room. So, but you might have noticed that they started negative. And we often, in general usage, the term mental health is most often associated with as a negative thing. It's most often used to describe conditions like depression, anxiety, and all sorts of other disorders. And I think that's really tragic because actually, when you think about it, mental health, health is health. That's mental unhealth. You know, and to me it illustrates that we spend so little time and attention and thought thinking about what mental health is that we've even hijacked the term mental health and we use it to describe mental unhealth or something else you might, whatever you want to call it. But that negative stuff is not mental health. Mental health is the good stuff. You know, you wouldn't use the physical health to describe illnesses, would you? So anyway, if we were to think about above the line on your stoichiometer being all the good stuff, all the psychological or mental health stuff, and below the line being the stuff that, you know, where you've dropped below the line is where you've gone sort of into the negative zone. We could think a little bit like this about some of the knowledge that's out there and some of the research and study that's been done, and we could think of these 2 areas or these bodies of knowledge like this. So the stuff above the line, that's all the knowledge about what we might call mental health. So what's right with people? You know, when we're functioning at our best, what's going on? What are all the different subject areas that help us understand what's going on with us when we're at our best? And then what's underneath the line? That's the mental unhealth stuff. All the knowledge about mental diseases, mental illness, all the stuff that can go wrong with us. Until recently, we've had so much knowledge out there about the stuff below the line, and very little until quite recently about really what gets us above the line and keeps us higher and higher and higher up above the line, what gets us up the slopes on our stoichiometers. And as an example, this is a stack of books, the DSM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or how many it is now, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The sort of the Bible for psychologists and psychiatrists and people. And then on the top there is a book that is just representative, really, of this new body of study, which is just over the last 15, 20 years has really blossomed and grown, and it's the study of what's happening when we're at our best. It's a study of optimal human functioning, and we talked about this a little bit at 4 and 1, and this is really a refresher for those of you that were here, and we're going to expand this, and we're going to talk about a different area of background research that's behind this. But these are some of the differences it makes to people to be in a healthy state mentally. So really good mental health, it actually affects our physical health. So people actually live longer. So that's what these nuns are illustrating. That's illustrating a famous study that was done over a period of about 100 years by looking at what nuns wrote up to 100 years ago when they became nuns, the vows they took when they went into a convent and became a nun, and looking at the orientation that was shown by their words and how positive and cheerful and happy they were they were all at the same stage in life, all doing the same thing. And comparing that with how long they actually lived. And they use nuns because they all eat the same food and live in exactly the same conditions. So quite a good study group, quite a good data set with lots of other variables taken taken out. And it turned out that the nuns that were just had a more cheerful disposition and were more positive and optimistic and happy about what they were doing in taking these vows and becoming nuns, and the way they described their lives up until this point and so on, they were the ones consistently that actually lived longer as well. So there's an effect on longevity. Social, people who are in a better mental state have better and stronger friendships and relationships, and they help the people around them have better and stronger friendships and relationships as well. People do better in work. There's research showing people get better customer satisfaction, better work reviews. They lead people better. They are better employees. They have slower staff turnover. They get better salaries. Blah blah blah. Goes on. There's lots of quite robust studies showing that people do better in work as employees when they're in a better state mentally, and it makes complete sense. It's kind of obvious, really, isn't it? People are better when people are in a better space mentally. Personally, we're calmer, we're more peaceful, we're more creative. We can problem solve better. We have more expansive thinking. We have a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in life, and these are all results of being more stoked more often. Feeling happier better more often. And so really the point is that feel good is not just feel good. It has lots of other really solid, robust effects on all sorts of areas of life as well. So Andy's going to talk about a pie.
You're speaking of pies. This is sort of, when I came along here, it's a sort of wellbeing function I like. It starts with a whole lot of pizza. I thought I'd just quickly actually jump back to that, and I was just thinking while I was looking at this that I'm a physio by training, and when I went through physio school, and you learn a lot about sort of biomedical side of health, so the disease, the illness side of health, and it really, in hindsight, all we talked about, or we learnt about, was the zero down. So below the zero. And when I got into my current role, and actually my previous role, which was lecturing here on health and wellbeing at the Polytech, but particularly my current role, it was just a revelation to me to see that there was all this research above the line. As someone who has had a couple of major depressive episodes myself and ended up in emergency psych in various places, to me that was just, the light bulb went on, and it was just fantastic to know that there was all this sort of positive literature out there, and as Anna said at the start, it's growing exponentially. So back to the pie. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is just basically just to draw a pie in front of you, and what I'd like you to do is we're going to be... Hang on, don't start. You don't know what the task is. So what I'd like you to do is, at your tables, I'd like you to come up with a consensus on what determines happiness or emotional well-being. Okay, now you've got three things to decide from. You might want to just scribble these down. One is the genetic component. So there's a genetic component to well-being or mental, emotional well-being. So there's a genetic component you inherit. Okay, then there's your circumstances. So there's things like your job, your car, your partner, I guess, how much you earn, that sort of circumstantial stuff. Okay, and the third bit is intentional activity. So things that you actively do to manage your well-being. So you've got three things there, and I want you to come up with a consensus at your table in terms of what percentage of the pie each of those things contribute. Any questions? Near enough. So what this is, okay, this is a model that comes from the paper that's at the bottom there. It might actually be worth putting it on the link, loading it on the internet site. But it's a paper that summarises a whole lot of research in this area, and it comes up with this model. So the percentages that are going to be on this pie chart, they're not set in stone, and they'll be slightly different for different people. But it's a model that's across the board paints a pretty good picture, okay, of those three determinants. So if we look at the first one, which is genetics, maybe some of you just yell out your consensus at your table. 10, righto. 25. Yep. Yeah. No consensus. Okay. So All right, so here, this is what the research says. So the genetic predisposition is about 50%. So what the literature says is it looks at a bunch of studies and, for example, compares differences between fraternal and maternal twins, identical versus non-identical, and there's various ways of looking at this. And the literature pretty much says it's somewhere between about 45 and 55%. So we go in the middle, let's say it's about 50. Okay, so the next bit is the circumstances. Okay, and what have we got there for some values? Want to yell out? Okay. Maybe one table, one spokesman. God, it's like trying to herd cats, isn't it? Any value percentage-wise? 25. 25?
10, someone here for 10.
10, yeah, okay. Anyone else down the back?
No, we're way off.
Oh, you don't? Okay. So the 50% has ruined you?
2.5.
About 10%. Okay. So if you think about that, okay, and you think about what a lot of us, maybe not in this room, but generally a lot of people spend a lot of time doing, a lot of people spend a lot of their time trying to change their circumstances. So trying to get a bigger house or upgrade their job or upgrade their partner or whatever. And they know this from studies that have looked at people's well-being who have had the alternative ends of the spectrum. So people who have had really low, who have, say, had a bad accident and become a tetraplegic, for example, and then their mental well-being has plummeted, but then it's tended to come up fairly quickly towards their genetic set point. Okay? And on the flip side is people who win lotto and their emotional well-being goes through the roof, but then tends to fairly quickly again drift down towards their genetic set point. So I guess the key point here is that it's only 10%, and it's a matter of where you want to focus your energy, which brings us to the next bit of the pie. And if you're any good at maths, you'll know what's left. 40%. Okay. So when I first saw this, I thought this is great news, because what it does for me is it provides me with some control over my mental or emotional well-being. Because imagine if the genetic bit was like 99%. I might as well just go back and finish the pizza and go home, because there'd be nothing you could do to influence it. Yeah. So we've got some control, which is great. And then the next thing for me is what do we do with the control? What do we do with that 40%? So we need a tool. Okay. And the tool, or a tool, which I've found very useful when it's being used, for example, by the Mental Health Foundation, it underpins a lot of the All Right campaigns, strategy and projects, starts with this. Are you familiar with the 5 ways? Yeah? Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is you've got a sheet, or if you haven't, yell out. You've got a sheet here. Now just hang on a minute, just keep the noise down for a sec while I explain this. So what this is about your own personal well-being. So I want you to discuss with your neighbour, okay, and just jot down some things which you think fit under this heading of give. So it could be your time, your words, your presence. It certainly doesn't have to be money, okay, but just jot down a few things. And I don't want you thinking about your involvement in the community. I don't want you to think about yourself, because that's something that I think people who have a community focus like you guys often put your own well-being last. So now's a chance to think about yourself and just take a minute to see what you do. Think about what you do that fits under this heading give. Because it's often a two-way thing, isn't it? You give, which makes you feel good, and it makes the person on the other end feel good as well. So just take a minute to do that. So you're virtually all involved in sort of community groups, okay? And there's a handout here, which I've got about 50 of these that'll be available at the end. It's just a couple of slides on the 5 ways to wellbeing. So there's a bit more information in here about the on each of these themes that we're going to quickly chat about. But the one on give talks about volunteering and community involvement being strongly linked to positive feelings and functioning, and it comes under the heading of give. So I'd imagine you've all got some very good examples of this, but who wants to just have a couple of examples from the tables?
Smile.
Give a smile, can be that simple, because you usually get one back, don't you? Yeah, which is good. Anything else? You must be giving in other ways. Story. Yeah, what do you mean?
Gifting people stories and exploring things which are outside our realm of truth only.
Oh, okay. Yeah, great. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Support.
So giving support. Yep.
Kind word.
Sorry, so I'm having trouble seeing who's speaking. Oh, yeah, kind word. Yep.
A listening ear, just someone just taking the time when you're busy and that just to stop because somebody wants to tell you something. You're not particularly doing just that they need that.
What a gift that is, yeah, when you need it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Give food.
Give food, yeah.
Homemade.
Homemade food, yeah.
Give help.
Give help in general, yep.
Compliments.
Sorry, compliments. Yep. That's what those compliment posters are all right if you've seen them, they're all right ones. They're still going strong. Give a hug. Righto. Hope. Yep. Okay. Yep, respect. So, I mean, these words that you're coming up with, they're pretty powerful words, aren't they? Yep. So, and it sounds like you're all sort of saying similar things, which is great, and you're all doing a lot of it, which is great. All right, we'll move on to the... Oops, back there. We will move on to the next one, which is connect. Okay, and this is about having sort of quality social relationships. It's not about having 1,000 friends on Facebook. You know what I mean? It's about having a sort of core of people around you who you can trust and you know will help you in your time of need. So good, strong social connections and relationships. So perhaps, again, have a couple of minutes and have a think about how you connect, okay, who you connect with, how you can build connections into your day-to-day life as part of that 40%, that intentional activity. Because one thing that happened, just to go off on a bit of a tangent I suppose, one thing that happened as a result of the earthquakes was that a lot of people, especially from out east, a lot of people lost a lot of their social networks and their close connections in their communities. So that'll be old news to you guys. But for a lot of people, it's trying to get the sort of energy and the drive to get back and build those connections again. It's quite a deliberate act in a lot of cases. So maybe have a think about how you can either foster the connections you've got or build some new ones. And discuss with your neighbour. All right, so a few examples of being active. What are people doing? Walking up and down the hill. Yep, you would be, Margaret. Yeah. Others?
Playing rough and tumble with children.
Right, okay, playing with kids, yeah. Anything else? Sorry? Yoga. Yep. Biking to work, good on you. I'm one of them. Walk the dog. Okay. Right, so just to add a layer of, potential prescription on top of this, who can tell me, in terms of, so a lot of this being active stuff is cumulative, okay? So you can do little bits and it kind of accumulates over time, and no matter how much you do, it's beneficial, like just keeping moving generally. But in terms of what the science says around how much physical activity you should engage in over a week, okay, to get sort of optimal health benefits, who can tell me how many minutes a week? Not quite. You're a bit over. A week, yeah?
That might be illustrated.
Yeah, okay. All right. Who's heard of 20 a day push play? Remember that program? Okay, that's 20 a day. Okay, what the Ministry of Health recommendations are is 150 minutes a week. Yeah? Okay, and that's 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity physical activity. So that means that you've got a bit of a sweat on, you're a little bit breathless, but you can still have a conversation. Okay? but there's more and more evidence coming out at the moment. There's more and more evidence coming out that if you can't do your 150 minutes, hang on a second. If you can't do your 150 minutes, then if you do a smaller amount of higher intensity physical activity, then you get the equivalent bang for your buck. So at the hospital, I'm always saying to the nurses, because they don't want to do 150 minutes, a lot of them, I just say, well, go up and down the stairs a few times and really get your heart rate up, and that'll do the job. Right, we've got one more to go, and it's take notice. Okay, now again, there's kind of a spectrum of things. There's a spectrum of things that can come under this heading, take notice. At one end is things like just stopping to smell the roses or look at the blossoms in the spring, okay, just to stop and be in the moment briefly. And at the other end of the spectrum is something more formal like meditation or mindfulness, so sort of sitting down and actually practicing something like that. So again, just a minute to see what you guys are doing in terms of taking notice. All right, thanks. Who's got an example of taking notice? Yes.
The last couple of days, sunrises and sunsets.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great example. Yeah. Yep. Others?
Run up a bar.
Okay. Well, that would almost be sort of a mindfulness meditation if you sat there and watched the water going in, and cleared your head, or actually sat in the hot bath and just cleared your head. Yeah. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? What else?
Well, my wife set up this happiness jar where you write down anything good that kind of happens, and you put it into the jar at the end of the year. You kind of take it all out and kind of celebrate all the good things that happen throughout the year. So the idea of somebody else.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That's taking notice, and there's some gratitude in that as well. Yeah, definitely. Right. One more.
Faces in clouds.
Faces in clouds. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is just to reflect back on your stoichometer and on the up slopes of your stoichometer, and just see if you can find a connection really between these 5 things here and what gets you up the slope. So just have a minute or two to think about that and chat with your neighbour. All right. So hopefully, who found some connections? Who kind of found that the things that got them up, actually, there was some mix of these things involved? Stick your hand up if you did. Yeah? Okay. Well, stick your hands up again. I'm interested in what else is going on in there. Okay. Yeah, okay. So in terms of this 5 ways model, which of these 2 things do you think gives you more bang for your buck? Because there's 2 of these that the research says actually sort of sit above the others. Be active. Be active's the second one. And connect. Yeah. So the relationships, social connections are at the top, and then be active. Some people may differ, but across the board, that's the ranking. And the other question for you, guys. One more question for you, and then I'm just going to flick through some slides and hand over to Anna and have a rest. What 2 things, to my mind, there's 2 key things there that are missing in terms of well-being, 2 key contributors. So have a quick brainstorm at your table, 2 key things. Okay. Right, what do you think, folks? 8 hours sleep. Sleep is one of them. There's a ton of research coming out in the last few years about the importance of sleep. Okay, and what else? Right, nutrition. That's the 2 I was thinking of. I know Margaret's got another one.
Did you poo-hoo then?
No, I didn't poo-hoo it. I just said it wasn't what I was thinking of.
We're thinking that before you can really appreciate any of those things, you've really got to have your basic needs met.
Yes.
Like, you know, somewhere to live that's warm and reasonably dry, enough money to buy food, you know, that
Yep.
sort of basic need
Yeah.
before you would really move on to the next level.
Yeah, so I'll get that
Those theories.
Maslow's hierarchy, yep. So the paper that the pie model comes out of, I'll get that put up on the site, and if you read it, there are some caveats in there around that model, and that's one of them, is that you actually have your basic needs met. Yeah, and there are some other things that are mentioned as well. But assuming you've got your basic needs met, then the model applies. So Margaret's one was spirituality, I think, wasn't it, Margaret? Yeah.
What about culture?
Culture. So there could be, this is probably going the same direction as the wellbeing definition, that there could be all sorts of things that plug in. In my case, I just thought that sleep and nutrition were the kind of two key ones. That's just my opinion. But you guys will have other things as well, definitely. Sorry, what was yours? Purpose. Yeah, okay, so we're getting into a whole, yeah. So there will be other things. Right, I'm going to finish just by talking just briefly about the All Right campaign. Who's familiar with the All Right campaign? Yep, okay. So the All Right campaign is, to date, has been largely themed on these 5 ways to wellbeing. I don't know if you realise the connection. So when you go through, when you look at some of these posters, for example, you'll see which one of the 5 ways is that. Okay, so that's connect. That's be active, and then there's some of them are more of a combination of things, and I guess that's what I found when I looked at this. The 5 ways was the amount of things that I was already doing that were doing a number of the 5 ways altogether, and the penny really dropped to me, especially when I read about that 40%, that I was actually doing that. I was using the 5 ways things to manage my own mental health and well-being. So some of these are a bit more mixed. Yep, so you can just think about what 5 ways could be involved. To me, that's certainly that's a taking notice. To me, that's my favourite. Some be active there. So there's probably some be active and some giving. Yep, might be some taking notice. Who knows? There's some gossip going on there, that's for sure. And the final post is not actually an official All Right one, but it's about 2 Christmases ago, just before Christmas, I came back to my workplace for morning tea, and I sort of sat down and I expressed my annoyance that I'd gone to a speed dating thing the night before and I hadn't met Halle Berry, and I was a bit hacked off about it. So then we had a Secret Santa thing, and this poster appeared on a coffee cup for my Secret Santa. So all credit to my colleague for taking the mickey out of me, but it's good value. All right, so I'm going to hand over now to Anna. Thank you.
You can talk about Live Brighter.
Oh, actually, yeah, sorry. I'm going to talk about one more slide on the theme of the All Right campaign. So the All Right campaign is changing direction. Is anyone here on the All Right Champions group? A few people. Okay, so you guys will know that there's a bit of a direction change. They're moving away from the cartoons, but they're getting they've got some other key themes that you guys could find useful in your communities to get some of their resources and promote. So I'll just whip through these just really quickly. So one of them is find your spark. I'll just let you. Can you guys down the back read that? Yep. So to me, there's a bit of strengths stuff in there, and you guys have done some strengths work, haven't you? I think. Yeah. So find your spark. The next one here is share the love. So there's certainly some connect in that. Someone's trying to connect with someone. The next one, mind your head. So about savouring the good things. So there's certainly some gratitude in there. There's probably some mindfulness in there as well. Some take notice. And then the last one, sort your habits. It's about finding the simple things that make you feel healthy and well. And again, one of the things that's come out of the sort of the research, the post-disaster research, is about people, we talked before about people losing their kind of social networks, but also people's habits and routines getting disrupted as well. So this part of this is about sort of trying to get those habits back again, the good habits, doing the things that keep you well. All right, so keep an eye out for more of that coming from the All Right guys, or just jump on their website, theallright.org.nz, and you can order all sorts of resources.
Thanks. Alrighty, so with your community colleagues, this is where the rubber hits the road. We've been thinking very much about it for you personally, your own personal well-being, and hopefully you've realise it's all right. You don't have to give yourself permission. It's actually all right already to take some time out and think about your own well-being and look after yourself. Because I know that's a bit of a revelation to people sometimes, because you're so used to doing stuff for other people. But let's bring that wider now, and I'm going to get you to think through 3 questions. We'll give about 5 minutes to each. And the first one is this: with your community colleagues, in the light of what you've been thinking about and the way that we've used the 5 ways to frame this well-being thing up, have a think about this for the next 5 minutes. What's already working in your community to promote and facilitate the 5 ways? So think through what's going on and what is already really doing a good job of promoting and facilitating these particular things that we know are good for people's well-being. So you might want to list them all on your flip chart there that you've got. There's 2 or 3 pages in case there's 2 or 3 communities at each table. And if you, as I said before, if you're on your own from your community, just feel free to join up with whoever else is also just here on their own. List them all there. Think about how many of the 5 ways they promote. You might find some things that actually promote all 5 of the 5 ways, and I would say that's a good one to keep doing. You know, if it's ticking 5 boxes, that's good, isn't it? How could you grow those, and what opportunities might be there that are missing? So quick conversation, 5 minutes, scribble down as much as you can, because you're going to take these flip charts away with you. Okay? Okay, let's see if we can do a quick race around the room, and we'll just hear what the top 3 are from each table. So I've got one more question I want you to give you some time to discuss for about 5 minutes, which means we've only got sort of a minute to do this. So we'll do a quick race around the tables. What are your top 3, when you look at them through a well-being lens, what are your top 3 activities happening in your community that are supporting well-being? Top 3, what are they?
I think it's cross-cultural connections.
Cross-cultural connections.
Time bank and inter-organisation relations.
Cool. Time bank and inter-organisation relations. Awesome. What do you got here?
Community events and workshops.
That's cool. Thank you. Oh.
And just general storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
So we've got green prescription happening in ours. We've got the sports end-to-end process and active parenting.
Very good, thank you.
Different youth clubs, junior volunteers helping out, and music lessons.
Great, thank you. Top 3?
Volunteering, giving time to others in need.
That's 3. That counts as 3. Great. What do you got here?
Oh, me. Meeting people, bringing them together, communication through strength, through media, and connecting with the community or the different organisations.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
And our ones were connecting through volunteering, giving through giving your time and giving food, and being active through the act of doing our food sorting.
Brilliant. Thank you. What do you got here?
Recreational facilities and events and Facebook.
Facebook. Whoa, never heard that one described before. Did you have something over here?
No.
Just part of that. What do you got here? Top 3.
Praise, so acknowledgement of other people in the group, and checking in with each other all the time, just like social updates as well as work updates.
Awesome, great. We go over here. Top 3.
Just lots of volunteering, community consultation, and the op shop.
Op shop, nice. What do you got over here?
So we had social media, community bump spaces and events.
Okay, great. There's a huge variety of things out there that count as people's top 3. Oh, there's another lot.
Oh, sorry. Neighbourhood welcome barbecues and embracing change, taking new directions.
Great. Great. So when you listen to that range, there's a huge range there, and that might have even given you some more ideas. So this is the last question I'm going to ask you to think about with your community group. What's one way you could do even more of what's already working well? So you might have identified what really works well in your community, your particular community or organisation. So what's one way you could do more of it? Because usually if something is working well and you do a bit more, it works even better. So it's a good thing to expand on. How can you continue this conversation and share this knowledge more widely in your community? And what's one thing you can take away from tonight? One idea, one thought, one revelation, whatever. A little conversation for the last 3 minutes or so around your tables, around that. Ready, steady, go. Alrighty, if I can ask you to just hold those conversations where they are right now, and maybe, it sounds like there's a lot to talk about, and that's a great thing. Maybe that means you need to carry on this conversation with more people from your community, and hopefully we've given you the basis tonight for having that conversation so you can get more people in the know about what really makes a difference to well-being, and hopefully you can start being more proactively choosing what you spend your energy and time on, both personally for yourself, but also in terms of your community activities, based on what we know actually lifts people's well-being and gets them up the upslopes. So hopefully that's been useful and gives you a bit of kind of sound background knowledge underneath all of this, and it might help you to know, where you can spend your energy best. So a couple of things for you to take away. There's a little pile of prezzies at the end of your table on a chair or on the floor there. There's a card, a 5 Ways to Wellbeing card, a 5 Ways to Wellbeing bookmark with the Māori terms on there, so you can learn the Māori version of everything as we all write badge, and then the handout which has the information about the 5 ways as well. All right, so thank you very much for your involvement and time. I'm going to hand over to Chris now to talk about some other bits and pieces.